Welcome to episode 72 of How About Them Huskies. I'm Connor, joined today by Andrew, no Matt. But this quick turnaround, we couldn't all be here, but we're going to still provide you some very important content because the Huskies are back in the Elite Eight. UConn in the national championship rematch last night defeated San Diego State by 30. It was a little close in the beginning, not going to lie. It was a 9-point game at halftime, but a dominant second half, a dominant game, rebounding the basketball for the Huskies, out rebounded them by 20 something. It was just complete dominance. You could tell it was the number one team in the country versus a Mountain West team, albeit a very talented Mountain West team in San Diego State that's won 7 tournament games in the past 2 years. Just unfortunately for them, they ran into us the past two. But Andrew, I know you were there. I was also there. How would you like from that game? What was your reaction seeing it all unfold?
Well, when we met outside my section, honestly, our prediction was right that they were going to come out running because they won the tip and they scored the first basket, and then they really kept things close. They tied the game. They led for the first time. We were losing for the first time in the tournament, but they kept it really close until we kind of went on a run. And we struggled there in that first half, but we knew that their depth was going to come into play because it didn't exist. The guys they did have off the bench were not quality depth players, and ours were. And we honestly we gave them their chance to score. We put in our depth, took out three of our starters, and they didn't score. So we that's when I knew that we were going to win for sure. Was when we took our starters out early in the first half, gave them that opportunity to take advantage of it, and they did not. So, but it was just all around good game. I love to see the 30-point win though, but it was a little bit of a bad first half for one guy in particular, and I'll let you start with that, and then I'll chime in with a couple of things.
Yeah, well, right off rip, I was a little worried because we all knew for San Diego State, it's Jaden Ledee and then it's everyone else. And Ledee had 7 points, I think, in the first 4 minutes of the game, and he was
He
looking
had all the points
unstoppable.
for a long time.
Yeah, he hit a three even, which we know he can make him, but what, he was 16 for 40 something on the season, so he doesn't take him often. But yeah, I mean, I assume we're on the same page here. The guy you're referring to is Donovan Clingan. I hope we're on the same page that we are.
Yep.
He struggled in the first half. He kind of I don't know. It was he got a lot of back to the basket looks he couldn't finish. He's had a few games like that in his career where he's not saying he's a lob threat like Sampson is. He's certainly a more talented big man in the post, but against a stronger body like Ledee, he certainly had his struggles. He finished with 8 points and 8 rebounds, 4 for 9 shooting. You really want to see him certainly not under 50% when he's only shooting them right at the rim. So, but we're starting with a negative in a 30-point win because there weren't many of them. Stephon Castle had a great game, 16 points, 11 rebounds. He had his first career double-double. Spencer had 18 points, 16 of them coming in the first half. I don't know where we'd be if he didn't have that first half, seeing it was so close. Newton 17, 7 and 4, kind of a really quiet 17, 7 and 4 for the first team All-American. Caravan at 8 points, 7 rebounds. I think all 8 of his points were pretty early too. He kind of quieted down, but he got us going off the tip. Who else? Hassan Diarra, 10 points off the bench. He had some solid backdoor cut layups, hit a couple of threes. Apostolos Rumaglu, I'm just looking at the points numbers. I don't know why I said him next, but he drilled a three. Hurley was all happy to see that. And Jalen Stewart had a fast break dunk late in the game it was already sealed. I'm not going to say to seal the deal, but yeah, the Huskies pretty much dominated this game from the start of the second half to the end, 42-21 in the second half, rebounding 50-29. We offensive rebounding was incredible. 21 offensive rebounds for the Huskies. How many defensive rebounds, let me see, did San Diego State have? 17. So we had over half the rebounds when we shot the ball. That's not normal. I mean, we all know we have great rebounders like Klingon and Castle and Newton are both great rebounding guards. Caravan's a strong rebounder, but to do that, that's something I don't think I ever would have expected us to do.
I mean, yeah, it was just all around a dominant performance. Klingon was 1 of 6 in the first half, but the positive was he went 3 for 3 in the second half, all three of them being dunks, I believe. At least two of them were dunks. I know he slammed two of them, but I mean, yeah, a little bit of a rough first half. That one sequence where he got like 6 boards in one possession and we just couldn't make anything. He couldn't make anything. it was just a little bit of a disaster. But then Kimani Young laid into him. I watched the whole interaction from my seat. Kimani laid into him, clinging through stuff. He was pissed, but he went to work later in the game, so he was fine. Those days are going to happen. But I mean, my player of the game from that game was Stefan Castle because his defense is just unreal, and what he does on both ends of the floor is he's he's just a one of a kind player. I mean, we've had really explosive offensive guys like Jordan Hawkins and James Bouknight that just don't really get it done like Castle does on the defensive end. But man, Castle is just such a special player. But you're right, Caravan did have those two threes in the beginning, and then he got the layup. That was his only points. Rumglau hit a three. Hurley's played in now nine March Madness games. Is just a great game to be at, honestly.
Yeah, after the game, Coach Hurley said we all know he has as many superstitions with the underwear, the M&Ms that came out recently. He says he really wants his son Andrew to dribble out every single game. That's a superstition he has. He says get the ball to him, but it's really cool. He's played in every tournament game over the past 2 years, I'm pretty sure, like you said. So not every program has that luxury. But back to Castle, he's going to be really important for this game coming up tomorrow, tonight, whenever you're seeing this. We'll get to that preview in a moment. One couple last thoughts of this San Diego State game. I saw Klingon. He was frustrated after a couple of misses. I'm glad to see him frustrated, slamming stuff, as long as it doesn't get him a tech or something. It shows he cares, and it's not like, oh, I missed a layup. It's Samson's turn to play. I'll just wait till I'm up. He really wants to do his best and help the team win, which we have a great culture at UConn that we play as a team. It's not individual stuff. So if Klingon's struggling, he goes to the bench. He didn't complain he was coming out of the game. He was mad at himself for missing some easy shots, but I don't know. The culture Hurley has built over the past, really since he's got here, but especially over these past 2 years when all this success has happened, is really unmatched in college basketball. I think that might be all we got for this 30-point win in the Sweet 16, which is crazy to say, unless you got anything else real quick
I mean,
before
I
we
just
move.
want to say one more thing. I mean, UConn Nation showed out yet again. Like that was awesome. The UConn chant was loud. The Let's Go Huskies chant was loud, and we need that again Saturday because we got a tough game that we're about to preview. And I've actually got a lot to say because I watched that second game very very closely and actually even took some notes on the notes app on my phone. Um, of this Illinois team, and it's going to be a great game. But we're going to preview that now.
Yeah, I have one last final apology to San Diego State fans who we've ended your season now back-to-back years. The Aztecs have made the second weekend Sweet 16 or further 4 times in program history. We've eliminated them 3 of those 4 times, so they really hate us probably, and that's not a I don't know. This is kind of funny that we always seem to match up and we always happen to come out on top. But yeah, they're a strong program. I mean, it's not like I mentioned, 7 wins in 2 years in the tournament's nothing to slouch at, especially for a team pretty much a mid-major. So a lot of props to them. But they're going back to San Diego. We're staying in Boston. We're taking on Illinois in the Elite Eight. That should be a really fun game. The number one Ken Palm offense versus number two. It was Illinois was number one before their game against Iowa State last night. We jumped them because we won by 30 and they had a close game, but it's going to be a really intense matchup. But before we really start breaking it down, what's your initial reaction? I know we both watched Illinois Iowa State. That was a close, very exciting game that the Illini pulled off. What's your initial reaction to this Elite Eight?
Well, it's going to be a tough game, honestly. This is honestly who I thought we were going to play. I will admit, I would have rather Iowa State, but this is also beating the extremely untrue allegations of we haven't played anybody. And of all people, a Purdue fan said that last night to me that we've played 9 cupcakes. And I didn't even want to start with the whole 16 seed thing, but it's going to be tough on Terrence Shannon despite whatever he has going on in his personal life, he's extremely good. He is one of the best players left in this tournament, and Stefan Castle is going to have to bring his absolute A game on defense and nothing besides that. I don't care if he doesn't score a single point tomorrow night. If he locks up Terrence Shannon less than 10 points, I'll be extremely happy. We don't need him to score. He has the toughest assignment probably that he's ever had because he didn't play against Kansas. He hardly played against UNC, if any. So he's going to have the hardest defensive assignment of his season so far. And it's going to be Terrence Shannon, who had 29 last night. That was, I'm looking at the box score right now. The next highest was 12, followed by 8 and 7. So he is the story of this Illinois team. Not saying that if we shut him down, he's a lock to win because the Mosque had a little bit of a rough game. Gurrier and Rogers as well. That rounds out the rest of their starting lineup. They can also score, but stopping Shannon is going to be the really important thing.
Yeah, Shannon's one of the best scorers in the country. I feel like there's certainly an argument to be made that after Zach Edey, he might be the next best player in the country. You know, you mentioned he has that stuff off the court. We're not going to talk about that here. I see some people
No,
not joking about it, but this is a basketball podcast, so we're going to stick to that. He's a really, really talented basketball player when he's out there. He's averaging 28.3 points per game in the tournament. Sure, it's 3 games, but still, that's not easy to do. I don't know. I don't think any of our players have had that sort of stretch this season, averaging that many. He's averaging 23 and a half on the season, which I believe I saw was third in the country, but tops amongst high major players by far. He's very talented. He can score in many ways. He can hit the three ball, but I feel like that's not his main game. He hit a few of them in that game against Iowa State, but a guy I'm interested in and the matchups standpoint is Marcus Damask. You mentioned he didn't have his best game against Iowa State, but I was at the Jimmy V Classic when they played FAU before we played Carolina, and he was going off. He might have shot like 80% with like 30 something points. All of his takes are just posting up down low and just doing these little hook shots. He can hit a three as well. He's a very talented offensive player. And I say down in the post, he's not a big man. He's 6'6", 6'5". So he's just uses his body to his advantage. I'm curious to see what our matchup will be on him. I was thinking about this long and hard, and that's not going to happen because you can't take Castle off Shannon. But I mean, matchup for matchup wise, I wouldn't be opposed to Castle on Damask. It certainly won't happen, and it certainly is something that I feel like Newton would be more than capable of guarding
that's what I'm
Shannon.
thinking.
So,
Oh, I was thinking Newton on Damask,
oh, well,
honestly.
I feel like we have the luxury to potentially. I think Newton will end up on Damask. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like I don't know. It's there. Shannon's obviously a level above, but you can't overlook a guy that was first team All Big Ten in Marcus Damask, who in the few games that Shannon missed with his legal troubles, he was balling out, leading them to wins. So I I agree. Castle's going to be on Shannon. I think Newton will be on Damask. Spencer will be on, I guess, Ty Rogers to start, but they really mix in that last wing position. Guys like Luke Goody and Justin Harmon. But yeah, I'm also interested in the front court matchup for this one because you see Illinois, Quincy Guerra, he's not too much of a contributor. He's a starter for them, but down the stretch, especially in that Iowa State game, he wasn't on the floor when the game mattered most. And Coleman Hawkins is a very, very intriguing player, especially for our circumstances. He's going to be on Klingon because Klingon's our center. He's their big man, but Coleman Hawkins is not a typical big man. He's a guy that averages 3 assists or so. He can shoot 3 balls. He really a very dynamic player. I mean, I was just thinking, I don't think we've really seen at least a center that plays like him this season. I mean, from the playmaking standpoint, also Iguodaro's solid, but he's not taking a shot more than 8 feet from the basket. Coleman Hawkins is pulling up from deep threes. But I don't know. That should be a very interesting matchup, Klingon on Hawkins. It's gonna be a great game. I'm excited for it tomorrow, and I'm glad it's the early game and we don't have to wait till 8:50 ish, whatever, for it to tip off. But yeah, gonna be a really exciting game in Boston.
With Hawkins, 8 of his 12 points came on the three ball, which he made two, and he also had two free throws, 2 for 5. So 4 points came probably in the paint. I mean, I don't remember every point from that game exactly, but it is going to be weird because Klingon's not really a perimeter defender. It's I almost wonder if they're just gonna whoever is on the post is gonna be where Klingon is, and they just stick Caravan out. It's such a weird matchup. Like I've been trying to think about matchups all day. That's why this game's gonna be so tough, is because we don't match up against this team very well, but at the same time, they don't match up too great against us. So
Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't really a fan of Hawkins' defense last night. And if Klingon plays like how he can play, then he'll be just fine. But they do have Danija. Is that how you say it?
Oh, it's much more fire than that.
Dananja?
His name is Dane Danger.
Dane Danger. Okay.
Very
All
fire
right.
name.
Oh
Yeah,
man. All right.
he's
Yeah.
him and Hawkins. They're the center duo. Hawkins is the skinny guy that can knock down a 3-1. Not skinny, I shouldn't say, but skinnier than the 6'9", 270 Dane Danger. So they'll probably play together a little bit. They did play together down the stretch against Iowa State. And if they play, it'll be Danger on Klingon and Hawkins on Caravan, which I'm certainly fine. I feel like that's an ideal matchup for us. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, like you said, we're two teams that are completely different in like not the style we play, but like the type of guys we play. I'd be curious to see who goes with which style. Like, do we try to match up with Illinois or do we make them match up with us? That's something I'm certainly look out for from the opening tip. Let's see. Maybe we can jump over to our players to watch now. Who you got for a
Good
player to
Lord.
watch? Could be anyone, really. Narrow it down.
I'm taking I'm gonna take a bounce back game from Klingon, honestly, because he needs to also bring his A game because we need that inside points. And whatever happened yesterday, I think he's just gonna forget about and he's just gonna go to work because he's 7'2". So I'm taking Klingon as my guy to watch for that game with a double double.
Who should I take? That's a good question. I'll go. I'll go Alex Caravan. We mentioned the hot start he had against San Diego State, 8 points in the first 6 minutes or so. He didn't score after that. 3 for 11 from the field, 2 for 6 from three, both below his averages. I think he'll have a bounce back game, at least in double figures. I feel like maybe I don't know who you pay attention to on this team. You got to pay attention to Spencer, Newton. Maybe Caravan gets some extra looks because you're trying to guard the two all Big East first team players. I don't know, but I guess I'll go with Caravan. But really, like I said, it could be any of these guys at this point. We're narrowing it down just to break it down. But we're not saying don't watch the rest of the guys. But I mean, maybe some more last thoughts on this matchup overall. I mean, you said you expected this one to happen. I agree. When I made my awful bracket that had multiple Final Four teams knocked out very early in the first round, I had Illinois making it to this point against us. Obviously, I had us advancing and winning the whole thing. But I don't know. I feel like I would much rather have preferred to see Iowa State in this game, even though they're the 2 seed, because Iowa State is the top defense in the country. Illinois had the top offense in the country, according to KenPom. But you look at a team like San Diego State, who's certainly much more of a defensive team than an offensive team, and look what we did to them. We won by 30. So I feel like we have a chance to. This could be a shootout. This is going to be a high scoring game. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. But this could be a shootout, and if we get off to a slow start, like we've grown out of it the past few games, but we had the stretch having all those slow starts. If that happens against this team, Illinois, I missed the first 5 minutes. When I got back up to my seat, it was 11-2 Illini. And even though Iowa State fought back, I feel like from that point, going down 9 early, you're not really going to fully make that comeback, and they didn't. So get off to a slow start in this one, I'll be kind of worried. But at the same time, I feel like when with these two offenses bouncing back and forth, there shouldn't be a slow start. But this should be interesting. I just can't wait for the game. 40 minutes to Phoenix. I know last year 40 minutes to Houston was a big thing. I haven't really seen enough say 40 minutes to Phoenix, but I'm starting now. We got 40 minutes to
It
Phoenix.
was posted on Twitter. Big Basil, shout out to you for posting a view from his seat. He said 80. Those 40 minutes are down. Now we're down to the last 40. And one last thing I want to say about Shannon is the thing about him is he plays quick. Like I was realizing when Iowa State gives up scores a bucket or Illinois gets a rebound, he gets right up the court. And if you don't have that first step against you, he's gonna blow right by you, get an electrifying dunk or a layup, and just make you pay in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. But at the same time, if he's playing way too quick, he's gonna be out of control. There were a couple of times where he just dribbled the ball right off his knee last night and it went out of bounds, bad turnover. So if Castle, I've been preaching this and I'm going to say it one last time. If Castle plays A plus defense, we're going to the Final Four. That's how we're going to end this. 40 minutes to Phoenix. Castle's defense gets us to the Final Four.
I was going to talk a little bit more about the tournament, but I feel like we got to cap it at that. Now we'll talk real quick. The other half of whoever we'd play in the Final Four, very interesting results in that West region. I'm sure we all saw. We expected the Caleb Love Bowl, UNC versus Arizona, for a chance to go to Phoenix to take on potentially the Huskies, but nope. We had a good old college football playoff style matchup with Alabama and Clemson. I mean, this just shows how unpredictable this NCAA tournament is because you have two schools that have never been to a Final Four, barely been to any Elite Eights, and they knock off the two of the top five teams in the country based on the bracket reveal. UNC was 4 and Arizona was 5. It's just that scares me a little bit because anything can happen, but I don't know. I'm confident in the Huskies to get it done. I feel like maybe this is a stretch, maybe this is a hot take. I feel like whoever wins between UConn and Illinois has a pretty good chance to win the national championship because I feel like they'd certainly be favored in that Final Four game against Clemson or Alabama, and then in the title game, defense wins championships is the saying, but if you have a top 2 offense, it kind of cancels that out. But I'm not saying this is the national championship game in Boston, but I feel like Illinois, even though there's a lot of talented teams left in this field, is one of the toughest left out there, and it sucks we have to play them at this point and not in Phoenix or in the title game. I'd rather see them then than now. And I think that'll do it here. Episode 72. A bit of a shorter, quick one in between. If we make the Final Four, we're gonna have when we make the Final Four, because we know the Huskies. We have a lot of faith. We're gonna have a lot of content coming your way next week. A typical preview, a whole Final Four preview, whatever. We don't know what we're gonna do yet, but it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be awesome. So you make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of that. Well, I'm just gonna share it everywhere. We really want the podcast to kind of start reaching its growth at this time of the year. It's March Madness Final Four time. It's just we really appreciate all the support we've had so far, but we want to continue to get better. So it helps you subscribe, helps us out, and yeah, stay tuned for hopefully the Final Four
One more
preview
thing.
coming. One more thing, go ahead.
That's the perfect way to end this. Illinois fans chanting, "We want UConn." You're going to get them. That's it. You're going to get us. Don't complain. You wanted
Yep.
it. You're going to get them.
You got him. I know you mentioned, and I agreed. I've never seen a team successfully say that. I believe the Yankees a few times have said we want Boston, and I think it was the year that the Red Sox, the 2018, where they got blown out in the ALDS. So you don't say stuff like that. Yankees just said we want Houston, blah blah blah. I'm a Yankees fan, so that's why those are the examples coming to mind. But you don't say that usually. It doesn't. It's usually because you're the worst team and you say you want the better team. But yeah, it'll be a great game. Maybe Illinois will reverse the curse, but they won't. But yeah, episode 72. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.